But I could think of you of starting a party at like midnight. Like what time will it go till?
That's a different type of party though.
Joe Rogan just dropped a bomb that's got everyone talking. He's calling out the total silence surrounding Ellen DeGeneres, and it's got people side-eyeing big time. With Diddy's drama blowing up everywhere, Joe's wondering, how is nobody connecting the dots? Ellen's name keeps popping up in the mix, but it's like the internet's pretending not to notice. When Diddy got arrested for those heavy charges, the online world went wild. People started digging deep, pulling up old clips of celebs talking about those wild parties everyone whispers about. And guess what they found? Tons of moments where Ellen and Diddy looked way too comfortable on her show, cracking jokes about those same parties that now seem a little too vicious.
Now, what time would your party start, let's say?
Like 9:30.
Really, that early?
But here's where it gets wild. Joe Rogan didn't hold back. He straight up said there's a reason nobody's asking Ellen real questions about her link to Diddy, even though she had him on her show multiple times. They laughed about the same parties that are now under serious investigation. Joe's take? The silence isn't random, it's intentional, and it's loud. When you really think about it, it's strange how quiet things have gotten around Ellen. And just when you think it can't get any more shocking, oh, it does. Remember when Ellen's show got shut down back in 2022 after that messy toxic workplace scandal? Well, that was just the beginning of her problems. Fast forward to now, she straight up packed her bags and bounced out of the country right after Trump won the election, moved to the UK, and even said she's never coming back to America. Wild, right? Now tell me that's a coincidence, because it doesn't look like one. And word on the street is there's way more behind the scenes than what we saw in the headlines. Some seriously spicy details that barely anyone's been brave enough to talk about. But before we jump back into what Joe Rogan said, let's rewind for a sec and remind ourselves why Ellen's name is back in the spotlight. Back in 2020, everything started falling apart when BuzzFeed News dropped a bombshell expose. They claimed that Ellen's Be Kind show, yeah, the one built on positivity, was actually a nightmare to work for. We're talking accusations of racism, intimidation, people getting canned just for taking time off to grieve, and higher-ups making everyone's life miserable. It was chaos behind the scenes. Some employees even said that the whole Be Kind thing was all fake, just a front for the cameras. One former staff member literally said, "That's the kind of stuff that only happens when the cameras are on. It's all for show." That quote stuck with people because it exposed what fans never saw. The scandal got so ugly that 3 executive producers were fired, and Ellen had to go on air with an emotional apology. But here's the twist. Most folks didn't blame her directly. They pointed fingers at the producers instead, letting Ellen slide through the storm like nothing happened. Ellen basically slipped away from that whole scandal by claiming she had no clue what was happening behind the scenes, even though the show had her name stamped all over it. Can you believe that? The show dragged on for 2 more seasons before finally shutting down in 2022. Ellen tried to play it cool, saying it ended because the show wasn't challenging anymore. But come on, everyone knows the real reason. It was her shattered reputation that couldn't recover. Now let's get into what Joe Rogan actually said about Ellen and this wild Diddy mess.
People found out that Ellen was mean, and all these people came out and said, Ellen, actually, she lost everything. She fell apart, disappeared. Because people found out that this character that she was portraying in a half an hour on a television show is not really who she was. But I hadn't already known that, because I had a buddy who worked for her. My buddy, Greg, who was one of her writers, was like, she's a fucking monster.
On his podcast, Rogan went off about how strange it is that so many celebrities used to talk openly about Diddy's parties, like it was some kind of flex. He even name-dropped Ashton Kutcher and a few other big names who used to brag about being at those wild gatherings. And guess who was right in the middle of those conversations on camera? Ellen freaking DeGeneres.
Rogan called out something that's been sitting in everyone's mind, but no one's dared to say out loud. How did all these famous people go to those events and somehow not notice anything off? Especially now that Diddy's being hit with heavy allegations. These aren't small-time accusations either. He's being accused of organizing what some are calling freak-off parties, where all kinds of illegal stuff allegedly went down.
And the craziest part? Celebs like Ellen, who literally sat across from Diddy multiple times on national TV laughing and joking about those same parties, are now completely silent. Not a single word. The silence from her camp is starting to sound a little too calculated. In fact, during one interview back in 2018, Diddy told Ellen something that now hits way different. During one of those old interviews, Diddy looked right at Ellen and said, "I invite you to all my parties, but you just haven't seemed to show up." Then he started describing how those parties went down, saying they started at 9:30 p.m., but the real ones kicked off at midnight, up on the top 2 floors of luxury hotels. That's when Ellen laughed and said, "Oh no, I know about them." Hold up, what exactly did she mean by that? What did she know about them? This is exactly why Joe Rogan thinks it's strange that everyone's brushing off Ellen's connection to Diddy. He's saying the silence around her isn't just weird, it's suspicious. Ellen had Diddy on her show at least 3 different times that we know of, and every single time they'd crack jokes about his so-called legendary parties like it was no big deal. And get this, in a 2002 interview with Conan O'Brien, Diddy even joked about needing locks on the doors for those same parties. Everyone laughed back then, thinking it was harmless fun, but now that comment feels totally different. Knowing what he's being accused of today, it doesn't sound funny anymore. It sounds like a red flag waving in plain sight. What really turned heads was what happened after Diddy's arrest in September 2024. Suddenly, all those old Ellen and Diddy clips started resurfacing and going viral again. People online began piecing things together, asking one burning question. What did Ellen actually know, and why is she staying completely silent now? Online sleuths went digging and found something wild. A tweet from 2016 where Ellen called Diddy Cuddle McSnuggle Stuff. Yeah, that actually happened. And when paparazzi recently confronted her with questions about the Diddy allegations, she didn't say a word. Instead, she gave a nervous laugh, dodged every question, and looked seriously uncomfortable. Her body language said it all. She did not want to talk about it. Joe Rogan's take on all this is pretty clear. He's saying if Ellen was close enough to Diddy to have him on her show multiple times, joke about his wild parties, and even admit she knew about them, then staying silent now looks sketchy. He's not saying she's guilty of anything, but he's calling out the double standard. When it's time to speak up, all these celebrities suddenly go quiet. That silence? That's what Rogan finds super suspicious. But wait, it gets deeper. Remember that toxic workplace scandal Ellen went through? Turns out some folks think there might be more of a connection between that and this Diddy situation than people realize. According to several former staff members who talked to news outlets in 2025, Ellen wasn't just tough to work for. They said she created a space where people were too scared to speak up about anything. Sound familiar? That's the exact kind of environment people say surrounded Diddy, where everyone knew something was off, but nobody dared to talk because of power and reputation. One former cameraman even said Ellen had this cold, intimidating stare that instantly made people back down. The more you hear these stories, the harder it gets to ignore how similar those vibes really are. The people on Ellen's old crew even had a nickname for her glare. They called it the Ellen Gaze. One former cameraman said it felt like watching a queen search for her next execution. He claimed people were genuinely terrified of her. Another insider came forward and said Ellen straight up banned Gordon Ramsay from her show for 8 seasons, all because he cracked a joke about her cooking during a segment. That's next level petty. You can see the pattern here: control and silence. Ellen allegedly ruled her set with fear, while Diddy controlled his inner circle the same way. Both surrounded themselves with people too scared or too dependent to ever speak up. The power dynamics were off the charts, and nobody wanted to risk being cut off. Now, this is where things start to spiral deeper down the rabbit hole. Over the years, tons of celebs have gone on record praising Diddy's infamous parties. LeBron James once said, "Ain't no party like a Diddy party." And Ben Stiller even popped up in a Bad Boy music video where he joked about those same events. But Ellen, she took it a step further. She was one of the few who actually admitted on camera that she knew about the different types of parties Diddy threw. That's not just name dropping, that's acknowledgement on a whole new level. And get this, back in 2009, right after Chris Brown was accused of assaulting Rihanna, Ellen actually confronted Diddy on her show. She grilled him about why he let Chris stay at his house after the incident. Acting all righteous and protective, she even said, "I don't want any girl thinking it's okay to go back to a guy who hit her." But here's where it gets awkward. Fast. Because looking back, that moment hits way differently now that people are revisiting her own connections and the kind of company she kept behind the scenes. Fast forward to 2020, and suddenly Ellen's own staff started speaking out, saying they went through straight-up toxic treatment and emotional abuse while working on her show. The hypocrisy was off the charts. The same person preaching "be kind" on TV was allegedly making people miserable behind the scenes. Talk about double standards. Then came November 2024, right after Trump won the election again. Out of nowhere, Ellen and her wife Portia sold their massive Montecito mansion and jetted off to rural England. Sources close to them claimed they're never coming back to the US. Ellen told everyone it was because of the election, but hold up, the timing looked way too perfect. Diddy's trial was heating up at the exact same time, and suddenly more celebrity names were being dropped in those court filings. Coincidence? People aren't so sure. Now here's where things get extra wild, the part most people haven't even heard about. In late May 2025, rumors started spreading online that Ellen had an arrest warrant connected to something involving her former DJ, Stephen "Twitch" Boss, who tragically passed away in December 2022. The whispers claimed there was a secret recording from Twitch that somehow got played during Diddy's trial. Now, to be clear, fact-checkers like Snopes came out and confirmed that rumor was false. But here's the strange part. Why did that rumor blow up in the first place? What kind of connection did people think existed between Ellen, Twitch, and Diddy? Online detectives started speculating that maybe Twitch knew too much about what really went down behind closed doors at Ellen's show, and that he might have had insight into Hollywood's darker side. The theory sounds wild, but the fact that it even exists shows how deep the suspicions around Ellen still run. Of course, all of this is still just speculation. None of it's been proven, but it shows how deep the distrust around Ellen really runs. In her Netflix special For Your Approval, which dropped in September 2024, Ellen tried to joke about being kicked out of show business. She even poked fun at herself, saying, "The be kind girl wasn't kind." That was the headline. But while the audience laughed, some people caught something darker hidden in her words. What most folks missed was when she opened up about how the whole scandal crushed her confidence. She said, "There are such extremes in this business. People either love you and idolize you, or they hate you, and those people somehow are louder." Sounds less like someone who's truly sorry, and more like someone still bitter about being exposed. That tone hit different for people who remembered how she treated her own staff. Then came another twist. In May 2025, NFL star Aaron Rodgers went on Joe Rogan's podcast and casually compared Ellen's old talk show set to Epstein Island, just because of the similar-looking architecture. Rogan immediately shut it down, saying the set looked more like a studio in LA and the resemblance was probably just a coincidence. Still, the fact that people are even making those comparisons shows how far Ellen's public image has fallen. People online are saying wild things. Some are literally comparing her to one of the most infamous criminals in modern history. And the internet chatter just keeps getting louder. On X, formerly Twitter, one user wrote, "Ellen knew about those parties and now she's chilling in England while Diddy's facing life in prison." That kind of talk shows how public trust in Ellen has totally cracked. And maybe it's not bouncing back anytime soon. Make it make sense. The internet is losing it over this. One viral comment said, "Joe Rogan is the only one brave enough to say what we're all thinking." People are asking, why is Ellen getting a pass while Ashton Kutcher's getting roasted for the same thing on TikTok? Another user posted a clip saying, "Ellen dodging questions about Diddy and then instantly leaving the country is the most guilty-looking move ever. She knew something." The online crowd isn't holding back anymore, and honestly, that one comment really sums it all up. Ellen had a whole toxic workplace scandal exposed, never gave a proper apology, and then disappeared overseas just as Diddy's legal mess started heating up. That's not a coincidence, at least not in the public's eyes. People aren't buying the innocent Ellen act anymore. And Joe Rogan speaking up about it? That's giving everyone else the green light to finally say what they've been holding in. Remember at the very start when we asked why no one's connecting Ellen to all this? Well, now we've got an answer. It's because Ellen still holds serious power in Hollywood and the media. Even though her talk show's long gone and her image took a huge hit, she's still Ellen DeGeneres. She's got money, major connections, and just enough influence to steer her own narrative. That's why most outlets won't touch her name in these conversations. But things are shifting fast. People like Joe Rogan, huge voices who don't play by Hollywood's rules, are changing the game. They're not afraid to ask the uncomfortable questions that mainstream outlets keep dodging. Rogan's whole vibe is about calling out what he sees as fake or shady. And when it comes to Ellen, he's made it clear. He sees something that doesn't add up. The silence, the timing, the power plays, it's all starting to look a little too suspicious. The fact that Ellen had multiple on-camera conversations with Diddy about his wild parties, openly admitted to knowing about them, and is now completely silent while he faces possible life in prison, that's suspicious behavior, no question about it. Joe Rogan's right to call that out. The reason this video is titled, "Ellen Might Be Worse Than Diddy," isn't because there's proof she did anything illegal. It's because at least Diddy is facing real consequences for his alleged actions. Ellen, on the other hand, walked away untouched, retired with millions, and vanished to the quiet countryside of England like nothing ever happened. While Diddy's life is under a legal microscope, Ellen's out there posting peaceful photos of sheep in her yard, sipping tea, and horseback riding through the English hills. She's living like she's got zero worries, even though her public image is hanging by a thread. And unless someone steps forward with solid evidence connecting her to anything criminal, she'll probably keep getting away with being remembered as the mean talk show host instead of something worse. Meanwhile, Diddy's trial keeps unraveling with new names popping up, and people can't stop wondering, will Ellen's name ever officially surface in court? Nobody knows yet, but one thing's certain, Joe Rogan and the internet aren't dropping this anytime soon. The court of public opinion has already spoken and Ellen's reputation is sinking fast. The woman who built her empire on Be Kind is now remembered for being anything but that. So what's next for Ellen? Probably nothing dramatic, just more quiet living overseas while the rest of the world keeps asking questions she won't answer. But that silence? It speaks volumes. Now it's your turn. What do you think? Do you believe Ellen knew more than she's letting on about Diddy's secret parties? Or is she just caught in the crossfire of Hollywood rumors? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. Don't forget to like, subscribe, share, and hit that notification bell so you never miss our next deep dive into the scandals the mainstream media won't talk about.